You ask, what is Afakasi? Afakasi is dead, he once said. And it was almost like I could see his hues getting lighter to blend into one. The corners that had been stretched no longer fit you, confined in your redefinitions of identity. Afakasi, where are you from? She asked. I never heard of your land. Shifting Afakasi to a place of limbo, implying that my sense of belonging can only inhabit one place. Afakasi, are you saying that you're a new race? In between, it's too hard, they say. It's not easy being disruption, the cultural eruption that causes people to and question and hesitate. Afakasi is running a race, they say. Races against races, but where are we placed? First, second, or third? Afakasi is cut up, dissected into blood-stained quantums of halves and quarters, measured, defined, redefined. Celebrate me, then shut up, cause Afakasi has no right to speak on these full-blooded affairs. Your skin is too fair. Afakasi is inked up, tap, tap, bleeding the brown to the surface, creating maps of heritage, a badge of ancestry. Afakasi is now redundant, they say. Their evolution and terminology discrediting my whole history of identity. All I've ever known is this, holding on to this term with a tight fist. No more Afakasi must mean that I don't exist. But Afakasi is my generation, a product of their migration. She feels, that's how I know she is real. She can't be dead. She evolves into representations of stories, hopes, dreams. Half-cast, smashing cast of molds constructed by others, casting shadows on taboo territories. You can't speak about that. Realities. Cast out, outcast, thinks, moves fast, looks past. Color. White father, brown mother. So you ask, what does Afakasi mean to me? Afakasi is all-encompassing, a compass to reclaim, explain identity divorced from its colonial chains, reclaimed to set free. Afakasi is not dead. A hard-part race, privileged hybrids cutting up prized inks made redundant. She is breathing, changing, evolving, smashing, whispers, kissing microphones, amplifying tones. Afakasi speaks, and she is heard. Talofalava. In the spoken word poetry workshops and programs that I run, and with any young aspiring poet, I always ask them the question, what story do you want to tell? I found I was asking myself that exact same question in preparation for this very moment. So I'd like to invite you to answer that question for yourself. If you could, what story would you like to tell? The stories that I want to tell are the ones between the lines. The poem that I just shared with you is the voice of Afakasi, a first-generation New Zealand-born woman of Samoan and English heritage, born and raised in the beautiful South Auckland. Now, I could have very easily come here today and showcase to you the amazing projects and initiatives that I run, or shared the milestones I've achieved, or even the amount of young poets that I've helped to mentor and walk alongside and provide platforms for. But what does it matter? So today, I want to share with you why I do what I do. What is it about spoken word poetry that grabs me and grabs others? Why leave my full-time job and teach it? In reflection, there are three main experiences that I've had that are the catalyst for the poet that I am today. The first experience happened in my other life as a youth worker. On a Saturday night in 2007, I was sitting in Piratahi Marae on Waiheke Island with an amazing group of young people I was helping to mentor. Now at this stage, I was writing poetry, but I'd never actually shared any aloud to anyone. One of the other youth workers knew that I had my journal of poetry in my bag, and to my absolute horror, invited me to share one of my poems in front of all the young people. So here I was, being asked to do the exact same thing that I was asking them to do, to step out of their comfort zone, be a leader, and share their story. So of course, there was no way that I could say no to this. 30 minutes later, after making sure that every single person was closing their eyes and promised to keep them closed, I finally shared my first poem aloud, entitled, "What Woman Will You Know?" This was my first experience that I potentially could be sharing my poem aloud and that people might actually want to hear them. The second experience happened later on that year when I was invited to be a support youth worker for a youth project happening at Wesley Community Centre. Now, I was really excited because it was a songwriting and poetry workshop, and even though it was for the young people, I thought to myself, sweet, I'm going to get me some free skills for my own poetry. So I rocked up to this workshop early, the first one, to meet the facilitator, poet Darren Kamali. So when I turned up there, we started having a friendly chit-chat, and I let it be known to him eventually that I like to write poetry. So he asked me, "You're at a poetry workshop, where's your journal?" I replied, "It's in my car." To which he replied, "What is it doing in your car? Bring it out of your car." I have been literally carrying my poetry journal with me everywhere I go since that very moment. This experience taught me that poetry could potentially be a way of life for me. My third experience happened in 2008, and it's probably the most prominent one for me, not only as a poet, but as a person. I was invited with a group of other youth workers to present what it was like for us to grow up as New Zealand-born Pasifika people at a Pacific Health Conference happening out in Mangere. So while we were workshopping this theme and how we were going to present our individual stories, I found I had a tension because I thought to myself, I'm not only Pacifica, I'm not only Samoan, I'm also English. How am I going to share that? So I decided to do it, surprise, through a poem. So this poem is entitled Being Afagasi, and it is a true reflection of what it really felt like to be Afagasi. The internal and external racism, the love and the hurt. I stood in front of some of New Zealand's most prominent and extremely staunch Pacific leaders and shared my story of being Afagasi. Now, I was terrified. I felt so vulnerable. I had no idea how they were going to receive me because I was quite young at the time. But when I read my poem to them, and when I finished, there was silence. There was no standing ovation. There was no sudden burst of applause to affirm me. But slowly, when I looked into the crowd, I noticed that there were grown men with tears in their eyes, and there were mamas smiling back at me, encouraging me. And I thought to myself, my goodness, they actually connect with me. And one by one, people stood up and spoke of their connection to my story. This was the first time that I realized the power of words and how this tool, spoken word poetry, has the ability to open up dialogue on sometimes some really hard topics. So there's 3 experiences. 1, sharing my poetry aloud. 2, the possibility that poetry could be a way of life for me. And 3, the power of words and developing a sense of belonging are all reasons why poetry is a catalyst for being the vehicle that I can best connect with myself and connect with other people. We all want to connect with other people. That's why we're all sitting in this room today. I'm also often asked, isn't it hard to memorize your poems and perform them aloud? And the honest answer is no. I feel the most free when I go through the process of writing a poem, editing it, revising it, letting it go, and having a life of its own. And when it comes back to me, it literally becomes a part of who I am. It becomes the language that I best can communicate in. And when I do that, it frees me. That freedom feels like I can cut past age, religion, gender, sexuality, geographic placement, and just simply connect with another human being. I feel free from all that we are told should make us perfect. In fact, it's in poetry I am my most imperfect. So for me, vulnerability plus poetry equals freedom. These three experiences all involved someone else inviting me to share my story, being provided a creative platform of some kind, and experiencing this huge sense of belonging to a people and a place. I really struggle to see why we don't want to take this out of existing as just an extraordinary moment and be a lived experience. Can you imagine if every single young person in this country felt that way in their classrooms, with their friends and family, in our community? It ain't a science. Young people will thrive when they feel that they belong. So because I have experienced this for myself, and that spoken word poetry can actually achieve all these things, I feel a deep responsibility to make this happen for other people, because I believe in the creative use of words spoken aloud and the manifestations of reality that can then follow from them. This is the heart of the Rising Voices youth poetry movement, to provide a platform for Aotearoa's diverse and young voices and stories to be spoken loudly, but more importantly, to be heard. It is about giving young people permission to take ownership for their own voice and to tell their own stories and not have other people and institutions tell it for them. Whawhitai te le lava and gratitude for allowing me to share a little bit of my heart with you today. Now, rising voices, let me hear your stories, the bones and skins of it, the grit and bite of it, the truth of all of it. Rising voices, we are the voices of poems, hidden, unwritten, unspoken, unscripted. The voices silent, made silent. The vocal legs, the crippling realities, the bus ride to another city just to be heard. The voices to the eyes that could never meet yours. The tails curled up, sleeping in the pits of your stomach. Our voices dare, the voices that congregates, navigates to create a whole new language we can all understand. The real voices behind the 6 o'clock news. Lights, camera, action, rising voices. Now listen to the truth. The voices of migration, sons and daughters, fatherless sons, double shift mother-daughters, the voices of you and you now. The time has arrived, the crowd and stage have met, the challenge now set, this platform for them to stand down. Damn, I will sweep this stage if it means they will stand up, plant their roots and speak. Let this stage be the heartbeat to revive the words you only ever kept in your head, those words you only wish you had said, those redefining the definition, speaking like the voices of yesteryear, deep in that premonition that you now witness the miracle being these rising voices. Please welcome Rising Voices alumni poets to the stage, Marina Aleficio and Brian Kashima.